This is a perfect example of why I've lost my faith in science. They operate on incorrect assumptions and then make incorrect conclusions. All right, so they say they can determine the part of the galaxy a star was born in by tracing the amount of heavy elements. So they use data from apogee to map all different things about all different stars, like 100,000 stars. And they found that up to 30% of the stars that they looked at had compositions indicating they were formed in parts of the galaxy far from their current positions. So here's where the issue comes in. They say stars create heavier elements in their cores, and when the stars die, those heavier elements go back into the gas from which the next stars form. So as a result of this process of chemical enrichment, each generation of stars has a higher percentage of heavier elements than the previous generation did. So then by looking at where a star is and the amount of heavy elements that it has, they figure that it has to be a third generation or later generation star, and that it shouldn't be where it is, so it must have moved from somewhere else in the galaxy where those elements are normal. Or that spectra, I should say, is normal. The problem is, how do they know stars create heavier elements in their cores? How do they know when the stars die, those heavier elements go back into the gas? They don't. Those are just standard assumptions that they operate by. So that's the problem with science in a nutshell these days. Somewhere along the line, it became like gospel that stars create elements in their cores. And then when they nova, or when they die, all that stuff gets put back, and then new stars form out of that new material. So this study, countless other studies, and just textbooks and knowledge in general is based on that assumption, which is incorrect. It's incorrect. It has been demonstrated incorrect by the electric universe without a doubt, 100%. But the dogma and the official narrative never changes. No matter what data they get in, no matter what observations they make that don't fit, they always twist it around to fit their assumptions. Right? They found 30%. So 1 in every 3 stars that they looked at shouldn't have been where it was based on the spectral assumptions. So they're like, oh, well, they must have migrated from all around the galaxy to all these different spots in the galaxy. We don't know how. They have no idea how it happened, but they're like, well, it has to have happened because look at the spectra. So without reevaluating any of their theories or their current assumptions, they get data that doesn't fit. And so instead of being a scientist and being like, well, maybe the assumptions are wrong, they're like, oh, no. Obviously elements are created in the cores. Everybody knows that. And then they have to come up with an explanation to how these stars ended up where they are. So like, oh, they must have migrated throughout the galaxy by some unknown way. No, that's what's wrong with science, is that they're not actually scientists. They're observing things, they're categorizing things, but they're not doing any experiments. They're not approaching all these hypotheses with a clean slate. They already have their assumptions made. They already know what they expect to find. And then when they don't find it, they make up something so that it fits what they expected to find. It's not science. Again, that's why I've lost my faith in the system. So now coming up is going to be a little animation, and you're going to see a couple red dots and a couple blue dots. And this is how they say that these stars moved from one place to another. Again, without any mechanism explained here. So you can see 2 stars on the inside, one gets kicked out somehow, and then 2 stars on the outside, one gets kicked in somehow. When I just think of all the progress we could be making as a species here and all the discoveries that could be made if people just let the dogma go. You know, stop pretending you know. You don't know that. It just makes me nuts. All these people getting all these grants, it's just all the access to data and information that they have, and this is the best they come up with. 1 in every 3 stars isn't where it should be, but that's not a problem. We can just say they migrated. It's so disgusting. So this is just a story I saw today, and I'm like, this is a perfect example of why I don't believe anything that comes out of, quote, science these days. They're just wrong. They just have their assumptions that they've never checked out themselves. Somebody told them somewhere along their academic career, and it's truth. It's obviously true. So whatever we find, doesn't matter what we find, that's got to fit.